Class is back in session. I'm your host, Coach Dwayne, just a regular teacher with a sports mind here on the 45th episode of the Sports School Podcast. 45 episodes in. Shout out to you guys that are listening. Shout out to you guys now that I'm on YouTube that are tuning in. If you're not catching me on YouTube, you can go on YouTube, like, subscribe, turn your notifications on, figure out when the new episodes are uploaded. Listening on Spotify, if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, again, thank you. I appreciate the love. Today's episode going to be a little hodgepodge. Going to be a little bit of everything. We're going to talk about last time we talked, I gave you my championship predictions. I thought I was going to be right. Turns out I was way wrong. Kansas won the national championship since we last talked. So we'll talk a little bit about that. MLB has started. 2 episodes ago, I gave you my MLB season preview. I'm going to let you know what 3 days in, what I'm feeling good about, what I'm not feeling good about. The answer is all of it. I'm feeling good about all of it. Even though Kenley Jansen had a horrible, horrible debut with the Braves. But some bad luck went into that. Braves got their World Series rings tonight. We'll talk a little bit about that. Tiger is playing golf. Marlon Williams, I'm out on a date right now. Shout out to Marlon. True story. I found this out early on in my marriage. Date nights are still important. Even if you're married, date nights are still important. So carve out time for date nights. Still important. I learned that from a couple at my church, and they gave advice. Date nights are still important. My wife loves our date nights, so I carved those times out. Marlon says, go Chargers, go Padres, and we're not going to talk about his Lakers. We talked about your Lakers already, Marlon. I gave them big fat F. Big fat F a couple episodes ago. You can't be the Lakers and miss the playoffs. Michael Jordan, in his last season with the Wizards, won more games than LeBron did this past season with the Lakers. And LeBron had a lot more help than I think Jordan did on that Wizards team. As for your Padres, I did pick them to win the West. I don't know if Marlon tuned in when I did the MLB preview episode, but I did pick the Padres to win the West. Speaking of, shout-outs that I was giving with this being my 45th episode, Marlon versus Marlon. Those of you that listen to my podcast and don't listen to his, check out the Marlon versus Marlon podcast. The reason sports school is a thing is because I got to be a student teacher on the Marlon versus Marlon podcast, talk a little bit, take up a lot of their time, fight, argue, sometimes even agree with those guys. So shout out to them. Make sure to check those guys out. But again, it's 45 episodes. It's kind of crazy. Shout out to my wife. She has to give up time for me to be able to do this. So shout out to those of you that are listening, my wife, the companies that are allowing me to stream on their various platforms. But that being said, let's jump right in. So we're going to start with the NCAA championship game. The A goes to Kansas Jayhawks. Kansas Jayhawks are going to get an A, and I am shocked. Because I very much believe that Bill Self was going to coach himself out of these games. No pun intended there. But I really did believe that Bill Self was going to be a problem, and he was going to get in his own way. Turns out that was not the case. He made some adjustments at the half, and Kansas comes back from a 15-point deficit. I don't think there's a debate. Did Kansas win the game or did Carolina lose the game? I think Kansas won the basketball game. I think the halftime kind of hurt North Carolina. They ended the first half on a big-time run. Baycott looked like his ankle was loosening up as the game went along. Halftime, I think that ankle tightened up. Baycott didn't look like the same player, wasn't dominating in the same ways that he was in the first half. Kansas goes on a run. McCormick starts dominating their guards. Remy Martin, who not only has a fantastic name for college basketball, but he played big. Abajnahi, I can't ever pronounce his name. He took over in the second half. Leaky Black getting in foul trouble made a big difference for Kansas. Puff Johnson was forced to come in, play minutes beyond what he normally plays, and he put forth a valiant effort. I mean, Puff Johnson was big in the national championship game. You talk about a guy who didn't play a whole lot of minutes, wasn't a major player in that very, very short rotation that North Carolina had. And I did talk about that in the last episode. I said if there was one thing that worried me about North Carolina, something that I believed could catch up to North Carolina, it would be that very, very short rotation that they ran all season. Regular season, ACC tournament, NCAA tournament, short, concise, small rotation, and I felt like it could possibly come back to hurt them. And it did. Carolina looked tired in the second half. They did have to. There was a lot of twisted ankles for North Carolina. Baycott had twisted his ankle again, and we'll talk about that later. The floorboard buckles, that's a problem. NCAA needs to get that fixed. My guy on Twitter, the J Shield, his name's Jai. He also has his own podcast. Mentioned it. NCAA's got to do something about having these games, these big-time Final Four games, championship games, in football stadiums. The sightlines are bad. I understand why they do it. They can fit more people in there, but the sightlines are bad. The floor seems to be dangerous. There seems to be an injury that takes place on these floating floors that they put up for these major games. And every time they went to the Sky Cam in New Orleans, you could see the Smoothie King Center sitting right there. And yet that is a basketball arena designed to play basketball in. And yet we're not hosting a major basketball championship in a basketball arena. Instead, we're hosting it in a football stadium, which is causing major injuries to take place. But that's neither here nor there. I'm talking about the floor and the Baycott injury later on. Caleb Love twists his ankle, stays in the game. That one was a little curious. I pushed back on Hubert Davis. I felt like Caleb Love maybe needed to come off the floor there. He was visibly hobbling. He was visibly injured. Maybe not. He was visibly hurt. Maybe he needed to go get that ankle taped back up, loosen it up, work with the trainer, then go back onto the basketball floor. Hubert Davis chose to keep him in the game. It was a very odd decision, I felt like. Brady Manick twists his ankle right there at the end. This is after Brady Manick had been hitting the head. In this day and age of shots to the head, I was shocked that Brady Manick was not forced to come off the floor and be examined for a concussion. I saw a tweet. It's not funny, but it is on Twitter. I wish I could remember who it was. It was tweeting during the game. He said Brady Manick doesn't know what state he's in, but he knows he's going to hit a three. Because Brady Manick still didn't lose that jump shot. I've talked to Carolina fans. They felt like they were curious whether I believed that the shots Brady Manick were taking was on purpose. I don't. I definitely don't think the McCormick one, the real bad one, was intentional. I felt like McCormick was just coming back down to the ground after taking a floater. It just happened to hit Brady Manick, who wasn't even guarding him, which is part of the reason why I do not believe that it was intentional. But shouts out Kansas Jayhawks, largest come-from-behind victory in the history of the national championship game. So Rock Chalk Jayhawk, Bill Self gets his second championship. Now, I'm not going to say that an asterisk needs to be put next to his championship or anything of that nature. I am going to say that Bill Self got lucky. Bill Self definitely got lucky. He dealt with injuries in the Final Four against Villanova, which was a much closer game than a lot of people thought, especially with Villanova without their second leading scorer. And Armando Baycott was injured going into the championship game. Now, first half, he didn't look like it. First half, Baycott looked like vintage Baycott. But second half, it caught up to him, and he was visibly hobbled in the second half. But congratulations to the Kansas Jayhawks. They are the men's college basketball champions. The B on this episode of Sports School is getting skipped because I'm handing out a second A. That's right. It's the 45th episode of my podcast, and I'm doing something I've never done before. I'm handing out 2 A's. This A goes to the Atlanta Braves, who today gave out their World Series championship rings. And boy, is it a thing of beauty. Is it a beautiful, beautiful thing. Just an absolutely beautiful piece of hardware. Right now, it's got 150 diamonds for the 150 years of the franchise. It's got a diagram of Truist Park. It's got a quote from the team's rallying phrase in there. It's got all the like 4-2 against the Dodgers, the series, the outcomes of the series that got them to the World Series. It's got the layout of the bricks and the notoriously difficult right field wall in Truist. It's got every player's name is on there. It's got a pearl in there for Jock Peterson. I think the Braves did a very, very good job of creating their World Series ring, making it unique to a unique team. A team that was put together at the deadline. It makes reference to the deadline in the ring, which played a major role in the Braves deciding to go for it. It also has 11 rubies to represent the 11 home runs that the Atlanta Braves hit in the postseason. And the 11 rubies are placed in the same outline of Truist Park. Now, not all 11 home runs were hit at Truist Park, but it's supposed to depict general vicinity of where these home runs were hit, regardless of park. So, naturally, when the Braves released this on Twitter, my smart aleck comment was, I wonder how the Atlanta Braves managed to get a ruby put into space. And in case you don't remember, I'm going to play it right here for you. And if you're an Astros fan, I suggest you cover your ears. That's the Jorge Soler moonshot that he hit in Game 6 of the World Series against the Houston Astros. A ball that I do not believe has landed yet. I do believe it is orbiting the Earth. It may be getting confused with a shooting star in some places. People may be wishing upon Jorge Soler's home run ball. Some may be thinking that it is a UFO because he hit that thing so hard. It probably does have a tail behind it. It left Houston almost immediately. It's a beautiful thing to watch. I can watch that replay over and over and over and over again. My lock screen on my phone is a picture of me and my wife on our wedding day. But a close second would be a just continuous loop of that Jorge Soler home run. It's very close. It's very close. It's very similar. They're right there. They're neck and neck. Obviously, I'm kidding, but if it wasn't my wife, it might be a continuous loop of this Jorge Soler home run. The Atlanta Braves ring is a beautiful, beautiful thing. It's a thing of beauty. So much so that the Atlanta Braves are serving a $151 burger at Truist Park. Now, it's got gold leaf in it. There's lobster tail, Wagyu beef. It's a big, massive burger. And you get a replica of the World Series ring. For $25,000, you can get an actual World Series ring. Now, I've run it by the wife, and she has told me, no, I cannot buy a $25,000 burger, even if I do get a Braves World Series ring. I told her I would wear it as my wedding ring. She said, still no. So, if you guys want to help me out with that, you can tag her on Facebook, reach out to me, send me all the messages you would like to get her about why I deserve a $25,000 burger that includes my very own Atlanta Brave World Series ring. You just put all the comments, post them on YouTube, post them on Facebook, send them to me on Twitter. I will show her all of them. And together, maybe we as a sports school family can convince her to let me get this. I do doubt it. I very much doubt that that's going to happen. But it's worth a shot. So 2 A's on this. This is different. It's never happened before, but it's my 45th episode, and I'm feeling excited. I'm feeling good. The B, we are going to give out a B. No, I said we were going to skip B. I apologize. We're skipping B. We're going to go straight to C. And that goes to Tiger Woods. If you didn't know, Tiger Woods played in the Masters. He's currently playing in the Masters. The reason he gets a C, now the fact that he is playing in the Masters is a ridiculous story in itself. It's fascinating to me. It's crazy for me to think about that he is here and he's in this position. The reason that this gets a C is because his first round was absolutely fantastic. His first round was a glorious, just wonderful masterpiece, especially for a guy who had been out for so long. And he's able to come back. He's like right there. He's within shooting distance of the leader. Round 2 is worth. Now, he did mention that after round 1, he felt it. His leg was hurting. He was going to need a lot of ice. Round 2, he played poorer, but on that, he got a stretch of birdies right there at the end to remain close and to make the cut at 1 over, which is still in closing distance. Round 3 today, the wheels fell off. Wheels fell off in round 3. I'm curious if Tiger's going to wear the red shirt tomorrow. Like, does Tiger believe that right now where he at +7 for the tournament, that he is going to win the Masters? I don't know. Now, would I put anything past Tiger Woods? Also, no. It's very much the same way I feel about Michael Jordan. If Michael Jordan wanted to come back and said, I can average 20 in today's game, I'm not putting it past Michael Jordan to be able to do that. I wouldn't put it past Tiger. I think that Tiger steps on a golf course, he always believes that he can win. I, right now, do not think that Tiger Woods is going to win, and I'm not going to tune in, which is sad because there's a lot of great golfers, and I realized that when I was watching the Masters. I was like, oh, that guy's pretty good. Bunch of names I had never heard of, and the announcer was talking about, yeah, he just won this major in the last 2 years. He won that major in the last 2 years. This is the world's #1 golfer, and it was guys I had never heard of. I tuned in to watch Tiger. Tiger is great for golf. Golf needs Tiger Woods. Golf also needs the next guy because it's clear that Tiger is no longer Tiger. And are we just waiting for Tiger's son to get there? This is my poll. I'm going to post it on Twitter under the Sports School Podcast Twitter at Sports School Pod. Which will happen first? Tiger Woods will win another major, or his son will win his first major. And I'm curious to see those results. I'll post it on the podcast Twitter once this is posted on all its platforms so that there's time for anyone to log into Twitter, vote on the poll, and let me know what you think. Will Tiger win another major, or his son wins his first major? Which one happens first? It should be interesting. Last night, I took part in a very interesting Twitter space. There were about, and from what I've looked at on Twitter, 148 listened, but there were 7 of us who had 7 random teams. And we mock drafted against the computer. So the teams that did not have a representative were mock drafted by the computer using the computer's algorithm against, what we were drafting and what we were doing. So the teams that were represented in the first time doing this, the Detroit Lions, the Houston Texans, the New York Jets, the New York Giants, the Atlanta Falcons, who were sadly not me. I was the Philadelphia Eagles. The New Orleans Saints were also represented as well. I believe there was one more. I can't remember. But and the Indianapolis Colts. And the Cleveland Browns also. I don't know how I skipped them in the first round. But so we did a 3-round mock draft. It was very interesting. I've done several of these mock drafts just against the computer, representing various teams. I've looked into some of these guys that I've seen moving up, guys that I see analysts talking about. And it was very interesting to see with people the difference that this mock draft how this mock draft went with people in it versus how they go when it's just me against the computer algorithm. So the beginning of the draft, nobody represented the Jacksonville Jaguars. The computer selected Aiden Hutchinson, the edge out of Michigan. Makes sense. It seems like it's going to be that. It's all the writing on the wall says it's going to be that. With maybe they go with one of the two big tackles. But I also believe that Aiden Hutchinson would be the pick. So nothing crazy there. The Detroit Lions did have a user. And he was a Lions fan. I believe I was one of two of the users that were not fans of their teams. Obviously, I was not representing the Falcons. I was representing the Philadelphia Eagles. But the Lions user was a Lions fan, and he selected Kayvon Thibodeau. He had said early on he's hoping that Jacksonville selects a tackle. He wants Aiden Hutchinson. He likes Aiden Hutchinson more than Thibodeau. But if Detroit cannot get the first best pass rusher, then the second best pass rusher is where he would go if he were the GM of the Lions. So Thibodeau goes second, a guy that I've seen in the algorithm dropping. Not very far, but dropping. I've seen Malik Willis drafted or even mocked at 2 to Detroit. I think that may be a little high. I've seen teams trading up with Detroit to get ahead of some guys. But anyway, it continued to go very, very differently than a lot of the mocks that I'd seen. Houston was represented by a Houston fan. The Houston Texans in this mock draft took Trayvon Walker. Again, it went edge rush, right there to start at the draft. Pick 4, New York Jets user, Sauce Gardner, I believe is the best corner in this draft, a guy that I would love for the Falcons to get. He goes 4 to the New York Jets. The Giants ended up getting Evan Neal, which I think if it fell that way and it happened that way, they would love it. Carolina gets Malik Willis. That was drafted by the computer. They didn't have a user. Carolina gets Malik Willis, a guy that I think they are legitimately linked to. He's related to Cam Newton. I could see Carolina going and bringing Cam Newton back and drafting Malik Willis with Sam Darnold there to try and figure out how to make that work. The Giants then, with their second pick, were able to get Derek Stingley Jr., a guy that the Giants user believed was the best corner in the draft. I think Derek Stingley and Sauce Gardner could be 1-2. If you look at Derek Stingley Jr.'s freshman tape, the dude was lights out. The dude was dynamic. The dude was dominant. So I think they're 1-2. If the Giants can come away with one of those top 2 tackles and one of those top 2 corners, I think that's a successful first round for the New York Giants. My Atlanta Falcons took Jermaine Johnson. They were represented by another Falcons fan. They took Jermaine Johnson, the edge rusher out of Florida State and out of University of Georgia and out of Independence Community College. He was on, what was the Netflix series? I'm losing track of the name, but a guy that seems to be able to move all around the defensive line, inside, outside, gets to the passer, great motor. I loved the pick right there at 8. I do believe a lot of pundits have Atlanta taking a wide receiver there. I think taking a wide receiver that high would be counterproductive. I don't think that's what they should do. But they take Jermaine Johnson, edge rusher. Icky falls to the Seattle Seahawks, a position of need that they needed. The New York Jets user, again, was back up for his second pick. He took Sauce Gardner. This time he got Garrett Wilson, the wide receiver out of Ohio State, to help Zach Wilson. And it was just a beautiful, beautiful draft for the New York Jets if it were able to play out that way. And so, I think the Jets in this mock draft did very, very well. And so I have the New York Jets user here with us on the Sports School podcast. He is at JTSkaggs1923 on Twitter. Jarrett Skaggs, appreciate you coming on Sports School podcast. How you doing today?
Good, man. How are you doing? Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Oh, no problem, no problem. So before I'm talking about the mock draft last night. I was telling the guys that are listening, I'm live on Facebook and I'm recording for YouTube, that it went very differently than when I had done these mock drafts just against the algorithm on my own. To have actual users in there, it did flow a little bit differently. It made drafting a little bit more difficult, as far as, the more times I've done this, I felt like I could target certain guys at certain places. Did you feel the same way doing this mock draft with other individuals versus just drafting against the algorithm?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm always doing mock draft. I've always been a big draft guy. Especially being a Browns fan, we're always towards the top five, in the years past. So, I'm always doing mock drafts, always seeing what I liked. And even this year, before the Watson trade, I was always, pick 13. I usually, see what receivers would fall, seeing if, if Garrett Wilson would go 8 or 10, Drake London, etc. So even with the Browns trading pick 13, I've kind of just been, just doing mock drafts. I'll pick random teams here and there. But definitely with other users, it's definitely a lot different than I expected.
Yeah.
Especially with me having picked 4 with the Jets. Just how the first 3 picks went, I definitely haven't seen that too much with 3 edge rushers. But it was still cool to kind of feel like, you're GM and you have to react to how the board's doing. So, let's be honest, those GMs in that spot, you get 10 minutes to figure out, if you're going to get taken.
Yeah,
you got to figure out, where are we going with this now?
Yeah, last night we got 3. So for those that didn't tune into the Twitter space, we got 3 last night for the first round. And then it was 2 for rounds 2 and 3. So it did get difficult. So you mentioned that you got to represent the New York Jets, even though you're a Browns fan. I represented the Philadelphia Eagles, even though I'm a Falcons fan. I just wanted to participate. I felt like looking at your New York Jets first round, walking away with Sauce Gardner to help shore up that Jets defense with a defensive-minded head coach, and still getting arguably the best wide receiver in Garrett Wilson out of Ohio State at 4 and at 10. If the Jets are able to walk away with those 2 picks, is this a successful first round in your opinion?
I think Sauce Gardner would be a great, I don't know if I know what word, consolation prize, is I really wanted one of those edge rushers. Obviously, Hutchinson in most eyes is going to go first. And then kind of that wild card is what's Detroit going to do? I was surprised that they didn't take Malik Willis last night. I was surprised they went with Kayvon. I was going to be fine with Kayvon Thibodeau or Kayvon Walker. And honestly, to see both those guys go 3, I was kind of sitting there like, those were, kind of where I was looking.
Right.
Like we talked about, I kind of had to adjust. And, looking back, I could have went offensive line. Evan Neal would have been my choice. But I just, kind of like what the Browns did with Denzel Ward, with Sauce Gardner is the better prospect. I mean, he's a 6'1" corner who can fly. I mean, when you don't give up a college touchdown, when you don't give up a touchdown in college at all. And, that is speaking value. Especially, you can say the competition level, I don't care.
Well, he did it in the playoff. He played that. He dominated the playoff.
Exactly, and, even like Jets fans before, they've had drill Revis where you literally lock down one side of the field.
Right.
Is Sauce Gardner going to be that guy? Who knows? But he definitely fits the profile of a lockdown corner. And I just thought, we go offensive line to help Zach Wilson. But this Jets defense has so many pieces to fill. And I really think Sauce Gardner, who I definitely believe is the second best player in this draft. I still have Hutchinson 1. But I think Sauce Gardner definitely would make Jets fans happy. And like you said, I do think Garrett Wilson is the best receiver in this draft. He's smooth. He is a little bit small, but I think that's not really going to be an issue. I mean, you watch some of the catches that guy has at Ohio State. It's just how he controls his body. It's some of the best I've seen. What Brian Hartline's doing with Ohio State receivers now is insane.
It's a factory. It's a factory of wide receivers.
And it's crazy that the two receivers this year aren't even the best. The best one's next year's draft, JSN.
Oh yeah, Jackson Smith, or Jackson, something like that. He's a monster.
Jackson Smith and Jigba. He's going
Thank
to
you.
be a stud.
Yeah.
But I definitely think getting Garrett Wilson would be a home run for those guys. I think if I had to guess, it's probably going to be Drake London or Garrett Wilson. I just kind of think with the uncertainty right now, I think Garrett Wilson's a safer pick, and I do think he's going to be, with Tam, Olave, and Williams. I think those are the best three receivers in this draft. So I was very excited about the Garrett Wilson selection at 10.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask you this. So again, if you weren't in the Twitter space, or if you haven't seen where I retweeted it, the rules, we weren't allowed to make trades. So the first quarterback went at 6 to a team potentially looking quarterback in Carolina Panthers. They took Malik Willis. They didn't have a user, so it was algorithm-based. Do you think a team is going to trade into the top 5 to target one of these quarterbacks this year?
That's a good question. I think the only team that would is the New Orleans Saints. I think that the Panthers are going to want a quarterback. I think they're going to have the luxury of 6 with all these teams in front of them having their guys. Like Jacksonville's not going QB. Detroit could. I do think Detroit's put a lot of smoke out there just so someone could trade up for them.
Right.
If I had to guess right now, I'd say no, just because this QB class is so in the air. Like Malik Willis, that guy is very talented, but he's still so raw. He's about 2 years away from really being that guy. Kenny Pickett, just the questions about his hand size, his arm strength, his accuracy is there. And then, those are really only 2 options. Desmond Ridder, from what I'm reading, is flying up boards, but you don't need to trade up in the top 5 for him.
Right.
So if I had to guess, I'd say no right now. However, I do think just because how important the QB position is in the NFL, if you don't have your guy, then you're not competing. I do think there's going to be more QBs drafted in the first round than we expect.
Is Malik Willis the best quarterback in this year's draft?
I'm a high school QB coach, so...
That's why I asked. That's why I asked.
I spent a lot of my time watching the QBs. I think... Here's what I tell people. I think if you look 5 to 10 years down the road, I'd say Malik Willis, yes. If you have to do a plug-and-play player today, my answer is Desmond Ridder, which actually surprises a lot of people. Yeah, Desmond. Yeah, I love his game. He's athletic.
So Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
No worries. He's very athletic. He ran a 4.5 at the combine. Big guy, 6'4". Doesn't have crazy arm strength, but very smart. Has a ton of games under his ball. Accurate. And he's just he's going to be someone you can plug in day one and not going to make mistakes. but he's not gonna be like, oh wow, he's a flashy guy. He's just gonna be a guy. He's gonna be a better version of Jimmy G. He gets the job done, and as a rookie, especially, I think he has gonna be the best day one. I put Kenny Pickett too. I think if Malik Willis gets drafted, I don't think he starts this year. I think he's going to get the Patrick Mahomes treatment where he actually sits for a year,
Right.
and then we'll get to grade him next year. And kind of, but I think it's like I said, as far as 5 to 10 years down the road, I'd say Malik Willis just because that guy has all the tools. And hopefully, he goes to the right situation, and a team can really use those tools to his advantage.
So it's funny you say that because I had a question because we talked about the first round. I had questions for the second round. I had questions, but I'm going to skip straight because it piggybacks off what you said. I think long term, Malik Willis is going to end up to be Lamar Jackson like. Now, is he going to be Lamar Jackson? No, but I think he's going to do things similar to what Lamar Jackson does. The guy that I was going to say, if you had to plug and play right now, like if you're a team that you're drafting and your plan is to put that rookie quarterback on the field game one next year, my guy was a guy who slipped and just dropped like I don't have a good metaphor. I think Matt Corral is the guy, the plug and play right away type of guy for very similar reasons that what you just said about Desmond Ridder. I have Matt Corral as far as my quarterback rankings. I have it Willis, Corral, Ridder. 1, 2, 3 are my top three. I'm not in love with Kenny Pickett like everybody else is. I have Sam Howell and Kenny Pickett kind of tied at 4 because I view them very similarly. But for those, again, I haven't gone through the whole mock draft. That would take forever. And I know I try to keep my podcast episodes a little short, but or shorter. Matt Corral in this mock draft last night with users went in the 3rd round at pick 72 to the Seahawks, which I did talk about their first round pick. They ended up getting Icky in the 1st round. If they can walk away with Icky in the 1st, draft Matt Corral in the 3rd, and the last time the Seahawks took a quarterback in the 3rd round, it worked out pretty well for them. I think that would be an A+ draft for the Seahawks. But are you just not as high on Corral? So I had this conversation with other guys who watch the draft, and they're just not high on Corral. And a lot of that is Lane Kiffin bias. They don't think the Lane Kiffin offense and is going to translate very well to the NFL.
Yeah. See, I don't really have an issue with Matt Corral. I think he's a good player. I do think a little bit of that Lane Kiffin offense loves that RPO. Doesn't hurt him, but this sure doesn't help. It's just not they do traditional drop back stuff, but a lot of what they do is an RPO, reading someone, throwing off the hand, handing off the hand. Dan Orlovsky, I believe it was, did a great piece on him. It was Dan or someone else, I forget it was a while ago. But they showed how Matt Corral, when he has to do a traditional drop back, sometimes he really struggles to read the field. You'll see, the guy's open, but you don't see him pull the trigger, and instead he'll tuck it away and run the ball. So, especially, your top QBs, you want to see them, when they hit that 3rd step, get the ball out of that. That's from, C.J. Stroud the other day, and I'm a Ohio State fan, too. Someone asked him the question at the spring ball, hey, what goes through your head when you get to the line of scrimmage? And he riddled off a minute 30 response of, I'm reading how many safeties are. If it's 1 high, I'm doing this. If it's 2 high, I'm doing this. And just breaking down each level of what he's understanding. And that's what you want to see in your quarterback. It's just understanding pre-snap and post-snap. And, obviously I haven't heard much about Matt Corral pre-snap. I'm sure he knows what he's doing. He's a Division I quarterback under one of the smartest offensive minds with Lane Kiffin. But I think post-snap he does struggle, which a lot of college QBs do, especially that first year in the NFL. It's going to be tough, how smart defensive coordinators are. It's just, I think he struggles to read defenses sometimes instead of what I say, instead of throwing a guy open, he waits for that guy to be open.
Right.
In the NFL, in the NFL, we all know you can't do that.
Can't do that.
It's not going to work. You got to have anticipation.
I mean, I agree with that. It's funny. I'm a head coach, in football. I run an option-based offense, so my analysis of quarterbacks doesn't relate to my actual coaching, in any way. But my offensive line coach is watching. He's commenting right now, listening to us talk. He made the comparisons. I'm just want your opinion on this, because you are a quarterback coach. He said he compared Kenny Pickett to Jared Goff, and he compared Matt Corral to Jimmy G. Your thoughts on those comparisons?
I think those are pretty two spot on comparisons, honestly. I think the Kenny Pickett and Jared Goff can be pretty spot on. Like, if you were to tell me, like, if I didn't know either one of their names, I think they're, like, you could probably call one Jared Goff and one Kenny Pickett. It's funny, my best friend, he actually played offensive guard at Pitt. So I actually got the chance to watch Kenny Pickett from the time he upset Miami his freshman year to this past season. So I've watched a ton of Kenny Pickett. I kid you not, before this year, there were so many moments I'm like, what are we doing with this guy? You know, like I went to when they made the ACC championship game, I went to that game when they played Clemson. Now, obviously, you know, Clemson running the ACC, but, I mean, it looked like Kenny Pickett had no business being on the field. It's just like, come on, let's find a replacement. But, I mean, you know, he pulled a Joe Burrow. You know, I think it's the only thing that does give me some belief in Kenny Pickett is, did he have his Joe Burrow moment?
Right.
Where he was just, you know, kind of like, you know, all right, I'm figuring out. And then one moment just snapped.
Yeah.
You know, he's just like, okay, now I got everything figured out now. So that's definitely what I have about him. And then, what did you say, Matt Corral, Jimmy Garoppolo?
He said Matt Corral is a more athletic Jimmy Garoppolo.
You know, I'd say so. You know, I kind of compared Desmond Ritter to Jimmy G earlier. I think you compare that as well. Yeah. I do think Matt Corral has a little bit of a better arm. But I don't think it's ever an issue if you get compared to Jimmy G. I mean, I know he gets a lot of hate, but I mean, the dude wins. You know, I mean, he's won each throw to Emmanuel Sanders away from his Super Bowl.
Well,
you know,
my offensive line coach is a 49ers fan, so sometimes he loves Jimmy G, and sometimes he does not. So I don't know if this is a good or a bad comparison, if he's comparing Jimmy G to the good one or the bad one. I don't know.
Hey, trust me, I've watched, you know, once we supposedly lost that on Watson, I was, all right, time to watch Jimmy G film, see what we're getting in Cleveland with Jimmy G.
He agreed with you. He said Jimmy G wins. Jimmy G's a winner. So he just commented while you were talking. All right, so I brought you on again. We kind of went off. We went off in the left field there, but that's what happens here in the Sports School podcast. When I bring students on, we get off task. It's what we do. That's how school works. So I'm gonna ask a couple more questions about your draft, and then I'm gonna ask you questions about mine because I always like getting people's opinions on my takes. You actually ended up being the guy at 35 with your first of 2 second-round picks to pull the trigger on Ojabo, the edge rusher out of Michigan, who just it's so sad what happened at his pro day. I think top of the second round is where Ojabo may go. I could see Ojabo going at the bottom of the first to a team that, you know, like a team like the Buffalo Bills or maybe even one of the 2 Kansas City picks. Just one of those teams that are already Super Bowl ready that aren't going to try and get a guy to plug in right away. I could see the Detroit Lions taking him at 32 just because you do get that extra 5th year. You can kind of afford to have his first year be a redshirt year if he's taken in the first round. But why Ojabo at 35?
You know, looking at the board, I just sat there and I thought to myself, obviously I'm not a Jets fan. I was just kind of I was trying to think like one, like, you're not going to win this year. You know, you got Buffalo, who arguably is the best team in the AFC. Miami's got better this offseason. It's just going to come down to, what Tua can do. And then I think we all say New England's probably still better than New York. I like what you mentioned about that fifth year. Obviously, like you said, we couldn't do trades. So I think, like, if I would have tried to trade it back into the first round to get the extra fifth year. But he's a dude who is raw, but the potential's there. Watching him and Hutchinson against Ohio State, it was like, Ohio State's tackles aren't good. I took the Ohio State tackle in the third, but those two guys, Jabo and Hutchinson, just made Ohio State's tackles the whole line look like boys. Like, Jabo is the athletic one, athletic freak. Like I said, I know the Achilles injury is pretty scary, but I do think just with how everything is nowadays, like, you see dudes come back from torn ACLs and they're stronger now. Jabo's still young. I mean, we saw Cam Akers not have the explosiveness as we thought, or he did, but he still came back, be in the playoffs, and did as much as possible to help the Rams to their Super Bowl. So I do think it's a bit of a risk, but I do think, like I said, the Jets aren't in position to win right now. So I do think I'll go out and say, you know what, let's take a flyer on Jabo, and if this hits, we just got a stud defensive end in the second round who could be the cornerstone for Robert Saleh. Because that's what Saleh's missing. When he came from San Francisco, he had his Nick Bosa. And, like I mentioned earlier with that fourth pick, I was trying to get my Nick Bosa. So maybe wait one more year, for Ojabo, and that could be your Nick Bosa.
I was sitting here and I was thinking about it as you were responding. You brought up the Michigan Ohio State game, and I just thought about it. If Jacksonville takes Hutchinson at 1, I wonder if they would consider Ojabo at 33, because if you remember when Jacksonville was good, which was a while ago, but like they won games they made the playoffs with Blake Bortles.
Yeah.
And it was because their defense, like it was Calais Campbell, like they had a bunch of dudes on the defensive side of the ball. And just I wonder if they take Hutchinson at 1, would they potentially take Ojabo at the top of the second round just to pair those two guys back up? I know Jacksonville has a lot of holes, but it's for a lot of the same reasons you just said. Like, you're not going to win this year. You're not going to win this upcoming year. So what does it hurt to take a guy with high upside? Very similar to what Dallas did with Jalen Smith a few years ago when Jalen Smith got hurt. I know it wasn't at his pro day, but yeah. So I get what you're saying. I think Ojabo does go top of the second, very early in the second round. If not, like I said, I have, in my own little personal mocking for all of them, mocked him to Kansas City with they pick at 29 and 30. I've mocked him to Kansas City at one of those two picks, the other one being a wide receiver.
That's where I think he probably goes to. I think he does end up going in that first round. I thought to myself, okay, this guy is slipping. Again, probably would have been another great spot to trade back with us, especially with having 2 second-round picks in that spot. Would have been great if someone's like, okay, let's go get Ojabo and just piling up more picks for the Jets. But like I said, we couldn't do trades. I was like, all right, let's pull the trigger on this and
let's see what happens.
How it goes.
Yeah. All right. So I know I'm taking a whole lot of your time. I
love talking football.
Absolutely. I love talking football. I love talking draft. Like I said, so I have mentioned to those that are listening and in the recording earlier that although I'm a Falcons fan, I desperately wanted to participate in this because I found it interesting. I was going to be able to get content out of it. I was the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, I haven't told anyone, I haven't talked about what my picks were yet because I was waiting to get you on, to get your thoughts on my Eagles draft, even though you're not an Eagles fan. The guy I was gonna get the guy that represented the Giants, but he is a Giants fan and absolutely despises the Eagles. So every pick that I made was awful, according to him. So
I remember him saying that. I was like, "Damn, dude. All right, well."
But here we go. All right, so I at 15. So these were my picks representing the Eagles. At 15, I took Andrew Booth Jr., the cornerback out of Clemson. I think he's long. I think he's fast. And I think he's the third best corner. I personally, when I was representing the Eagles, I did a couple of these mock drafts against just the analytics and against the computer, and I walked away with Derek Stingley Jr. a lot. And I thought that was the guy I was targeting at 15. He didn't fall. I ended up taking Andrew Booth Jr. And then at 18, I went defense again for the Eagles, taking Nakobe Dean, the linebacker out of Georgia, a guy that I think it just skyrocketed after the combine and his pro day. So 15, 18 going defense for the Eagles. Your thoughts right there.
So it's actually funny. My girlfriend, she's from Hamburg, PA, so her and her family are Eagles fans. So I have a little bit of, Eagles connection. I don't hate either pick. I have seen starting to knock Nakobe Dean. I kind of think he's getting a JOK treatment, honestly.
That's who I think he's going to end up being. I think he's the reincarnation of JOK.
I do too. I mean, he was. What I love the most about Nakobe Dean is he was the leader of that defense, and that defense was the best in college football. I mean, he was, in that national championship game, like he's leading those guys, like getting them, hey, you're going to be here, you're going to be doing this. Like he was being a leader and like getting on guys, and then when they performed, he was the first guy there to cheer him up. So I really like that. I think he's a great leader. I think he can make a lot of tackles. As far as Andrew Booth, like you said, I think he's corner 3, long, lengthy guy. You can't go wrong with Clemson corners. AJ Terrell, down in Atlanta is a great example.
Yep.
I was surprised, however, you can go offense, defense, especially grabbing a receiver. But the benefit of this draft class is this receiver class is so freaking loaded that you could find a starter in the 4th round.
So that was.
Go ahead.
So my rationale, again, representing the Eagles, was I have guys in tiers, and I do that because I do a NFL draft preview episode. I have guys in tiers, and so when I was representing the Eagles, I was looking at my tiers, and so my next tier of corners and my next tier of linebackers was in my mind, a much more significant drop than my tiers as far as wide receivers were concerned. Because the way the draft fell, in round 2, I took wide receiver, and in round 3, I took wide receiver. Because I do believe this is the year that the Eagles, this is like Jalen Hurts, prove it or move it type of year. In round 2, I took Alec Pierce, a wide receiver that I think is underrated because he played at Cincinnati. He's an
athletic freak.
Yeah, 6'3", 4'3". 6'3", 4'3". I think he's an athletic freak. And then in round 3, I took a guy who I think, if he doesn't get hurt, is potentially one of the top 2 wide receivers in this draft in Justin Ross out of Clemson. So I did go wide receiver, round 2, round 3 for the Eagles, understanding that they do need wide receivers.
Now, let me ask you this. If they had that third first-round pick still, where would you have gone with that?
It was gonna be wide receiver. So when we were putting this together, the Eagles had 3 first-round picks. Then the trade with the Saints happened. And when I was kind of prepping for it, because I didn't want to get on the Twitter space and seem like I had no idea what I was talking about. My plan was 2 defense and a wide receiver. And then I was also planning to take another wide receiver in round 2 or round 3, depending how it fell. So my third first-round pick was going to be a wide receiver because I felt like one of those top guys were going to fall to me. Once I lost that, because my plan was to go defense at 15, one of the wide receivers, which the way the board fell last night, I'm looking at it right now, would have been Chris Olave, and then went defense again at 8 with their third pick. But they traded that third first-round pick. But, yes, I would have taken a wide receiver in the first round had they had 3 first-round picks.
Yeah, which, by the way, I think, kind of like you mentioned, this is the Jalen Hurts make or break year. I think that was a fantastic trade for them. Even we saw this year, like, the market is forever, one, because the QB movement, because of the Deshaun Watson contract. I mean, which is crazy. Like, it's, like, expensive now what Watson got. You know, and obviously, you know, he has questions, which, you know, obviously we won't get into, but, you know, like, we're going to look, talking strictly football, just football. We're going to look at the contract Watson got now, and 5 years down the road, we're going to be like, wow, he's underpaid. You know, like, especially now, like, the Ravens owner's already mad. He's like, oh, how could you do that? He doesn't want to pay Lamar Jackson.
Right.
You know, so Philadelphia could be in Lamar Jackson next year. We already saw Kyler Murray got upset with Arizona. They could be looking, you know, at Kyler Murray next year. And who knows? There could be a QB that we have absolutely no idea who's asking for a trade. And, you know, Philadelphia has all this ammunition to go make a deal. I do think Philly and Miami are going to have 2 different starting quarterbacks next year. Because I myself am not a believer in Hurts or Tua. And so I think Miami, this is my just guess today, I think Miami ends up with Lamar. So I just think, you know, with him being from Florida, they're like, hey, we'll give you whatever you want, pair you up with Tyreek Hill. And then I think Philadelphia, A, is going to do everything they can and move up at the draft, which is going to be a loaded QB class next
draft.
year.
Yep.
Or B, they come out and they find a QB who could be available next offseason.
Yeah. All right, I'm gonna ask you one last question. I'm gonna let you go. And again, I appreciate your time. You are a Browns fan, correct?
Correct.
All right, so I'm gonna give you the Browns picks, and I'm gonna give you the Browns picks. I'm gonna let you rate the Browns draft. The Browns obviously don't have a first-round pick, so they picked at 44. They took Christian Watson, the wide receiver out of North Dakota State. Then they went at 78 and took Troy Anderson, the linebacker from Montana State. And then at 99, in my opinion, was their best pick in Myjai Sanders, the edge rusher, again from Cincinnati. Seems like all these guys from Cincinnati are underrated in my opinion. Your thoughts on the Cleveland Browns mock last night?
See, it's so hard right now because we still have so many questions. Like, is Clowney coming back? What are we doing with the other receiver spot? You know, are we going to get Will Fuller? You know, I know Benjamin Albright has mentioned, you know, it's going to happen. But I do think the Browns are trying to get someone better than that. So I think, you know, like, okay, we know we have this guy, so he's in our back pocket. And then same with Landry, you know. So it's like, it's so hard because there's still so many questions. But at 44, A, Travis Jones, B, George Pickens, C, Logan Hall, or D, Cameron Thomas. I didn't mind the Christian Watson pick. I'm not as big his head as other people are. I do think he's a little bit of a project. I know George Pickens got taken by the Colts. I do think if George Pickens is healthy, he's a first-round wide receiver. And he could very well be a first-round wide receiver.
Right.
You know, I'm starting to see some mock draft where he's starting to move up. Troy Anderson, I wasn't a fan of that because
I don't think he has a defined position in the NFL.
no, and we already have that with JOK. Like we already have where we were struck. Like JOK is kind of like the same personnel, and I know we talked about the Kobe Dean. I am a fan of Kobe Dean. However, I am a believer in the linebacker position isn't as important as it used to be, just because of how the NFL is. Like back in the 2000s, you needed a Ray Lewis who just handled all the run game. Now we see so many safeties playing linebacker now. You know, do we really want a Troy Anderson, JOK, Anthony Walker, Sione Takitaki linebacker? I just think that's too much. You know, I think we're fine now with JOK, Anthony Walker, and Sione Takitaki. So I would have went edge there since we went wide receiver at 44. Like you said, Sanders. I do like Sanders. I know people complain about the weight, but I believe he's up to about 250 now, which I mean is perfectly fine. And depending what the Browns do, like I'm assuming Clowney's going to come back. You know, you're going to have Clowney, Sanders, Miles, and someone who I'm actually really excited for is Chase Winovich. I think Chase Winovich, that trade was a steal for the Browns because when Chase Winovich got on the field in New England, he caused pressure. You know, and New England doesn't have a dominant defensive end. They have a great scheme. They don't have a dominant defensive end like Myles Garrett.
Right.
Like when it's third down and you go our little NASCAR package and you've got Myles Garrett, you got Clowney inside, and you got Winovich on the outside, that's going to cause havoc. So I do like the Sanders pick. I do think the Browns, with their first three picks, are probably going to go wide receiver, defensive tackle, and edge. Because, I mean, right now our starting defensive tackle is Tavon Bryant. And, I think we all know how Tavon Bryant is. So they definitely have to fix the inside of the defensive line.
Oh, man. Oh, well, like I said, man, I appreciate you coming on the podcast. I appreciate you chalking it up with me. And we're going to have to do this again. I'm going to have to get you back on closer to the NFL draft.
Yeah, for sure. And thanks for having me. Whenever you want me, just let me know. Like I said, I love talking draft. I could do this for another hour. You know, it's flash, just talking about players, where they're going to go, schemes. You know, it's a fun time of the year.
Absolutely.
You know, football's dominating the world 365 days a year. So, but again, thanks for having me. You know, like I said, whenever you want me, just let me know. And you know, real quick, being a Buckeyes fan, you know, rest in peace, Dwayne Haskins.
Oh, absolutely, 100%.
What happened today was, I was
tragic.
I was speechless. You know, I mean, I saw a tweet saying, you know, there's no Justin Fields or C.J. Stroud without Dwayne Haskins. It's true. He changed the QB position for Ohio State. You know, I mean, I'm 24 years old. I'm the same age as Dwayne. You know, not trying to get, you know, end sets with games. I want to say RIP to him, praying for, you know, his family and friends. And, you know, just enjoy life while we can, man. Absolutely,
100%. Absolutely. That was well said. Well said. But thanks again for coming on. Now I'll definitely have you back on.
For sure. Appreciate it, man.
All right.
Thank you.
You have a great night. All right.
You too.
That was Jarrett Skaggs. So you can find him on Twitter. I'm going to go on. We're going to bring in the Giants user now. I can't remember if he was a Giants fan or not, but he drafted as the New York Giants last night. His name is Lucas Gray. Twitter handle is at GR21146340. How you doing tonight, sir?
How's it going, man?
Oh, it's going. So first things first, I've talked about the mock draft and the setup and how it went. I just had the Jets user from last night's draft on. He and I were talking about how we were both picking for teams that we don't cheer for. So were you a Giants fan picking for the Giants?
I am a Giants fan. I'm a proud Giants fan, yeah.
Giants fan picking for the Giants. So every pick I made last night was horrible, in your opinion.
So you were Eagles, right?
I was the Eagles last night.
It was horrible in the sense that I just hate the Eagles, but I think honestly the picks you made were solid for what they needed. And I thought that Jalen Hurts, giving Jalen Hurts support draft, mindset was pretty. I like that. For Jalen Hurts, it's a good mindset.
Yeah. All right, so you were a Giants fan picking for the Giants. If you walked away with last night's first 3 rounds for the Giants, so let me say who your picks were for the. I went over your first round already because I went over the whole first round. But last night mock draft, the Giants walked away with Evan Neal, the tackle from Alabama, Derek Stingley Jr., the corner from LSU. So that was my second tackle, my second corner, which I know we disagree on. Boye Mafe, the edge rusher from Minnesota, and Brian Asamoah, who I think is an underrated linebacker out of Oklahoma, and probably my favorite pick of yours, Jelani Woods, the tight end from Virginia. If that is what happens on drafts day 1 and day 2 for your New York Giants, are you excited, happy, or is there something different?
I'm happy besides one thing. Okay. I like Mafe. I think he's great. I'm really hoping with the injury that happened to Ojabo, I would love to see him follow us because I think that I actually before the injury I wanted us to take Ojabo at 7. I think Ojabo is so good. He's so good. He's such an underrated pass rusher in this draft. Could have made Hutchinson obviously. And I think that him and Aziz would make a crazy duo together when he gets healthy. So. Besides that, I think it's perfect. I think it'd be perfect. I would be so happy. That Neal and Singley, besides Thibodeau, obviously if you're able to get him, but if you can't get Thibodeau, it's my top 2 player to trust again, without a doubt.
Okay, so you at 5. So we talked. Me and the Jets user Jarrett just talked about how we had both done mock drafts over and over and over against the algorithm of the computer, and the way last night's went was the first time I had seen this top 3. With Hutchinson, Thibodeau, Walker going 1, 2, 3. The Jets user said he was targeting one of those edge rushers, thinking that Detroit was going to go somewhere else. He takes Sauce. You had the shot at one of the top 2 tackles. So why Evan Neal over Ike Ekwonu out of NC State?
Well, I actually, on my list for ranking, I think Ike, in my opinion, is a better tackle for the scheme for the Giants. I think that Evan Neal would be a player who would be good for the Giants if we didn't have Andrew Thomas. But I was picking from a sense what I know Joe Schoen likes, and I think that he likes Neal more, coming from a proven school like Alabama. I think that Neal would be the more realistic pick. I like Ike more.
So if you were the GM of the Giants, would you have taken Ike?
I would have taken Ike. I like Ike. I think Ike is miles ahead. And for the Giants scheme, at least, better.
Okay. So at pick 7, you took Derek Stingley Jr. And last night you said best corner in the draft. And
I love Sauce, but he's by far the best.
So before last year, if I'm being honest and I'm being upfront, before last year, I 100% would have agreed with you. Absolutely, without a doubt, would have agreed with you. I thought Derek Stingley, after his true freshman year, was ready to play in the NFL. I think what Sauce did last year is just mind-boggling to me. But I think I have Sauce 1. I have Derek Stingley 1B. I do think they're right there. But why is Derek Stingley Jr. your cornerback 1 over Sauce Gardner?
I think Sauce Gardner I think both of them would be fantastic cornerbacks. I love them both, and I'm happy if the Giants take either one if we do fall in a position where we take a corner. But I think that it's just a situation, right, where you come out of last season, and are you telling me that after last season, immediately after the season ended, everyone was saying Sauce Gardner top 10 pick?
I was after the Alabama game.
I didn't hear anyone say Gardner was a top 10 pick.
Oh yeah, I'm an absolute nobody. Don't get me wrong, but I watching Sauce Gardner play because I, like everyone else, was like, well, who has Cincinnati really played? You know, that could play into his stats. And then I watched him in the playoff, and I was like,
He was in the playoffs.
huh?
He was so good in the playoffs.
That's what I'm saying. I was like, okay, this guy's legit. This guy is legit. And I know Stingley has done similar things at LSU. I think I don't, and I do think, and this is my argument against myself. This is my argument against myself. I think SEC teams stopped throwing to Derek Stingley's side of the field, and I think that's why his numbers decreased. Plus the injury, obviously that goes into it too. But watching Sauce play in the playoff, I was like, this guy is dynamic. This guy is next level good.
Yeah, it's just a situation for me where I think that Gardner probably has a higher ceiling, like has a higher potential ceiling, right?
Right.
I think Gardner could literally be the guy who is one of those game-changing corners, right? He has the frame for it. He has the game sense for it. He has all that. I know you're gonna call me crazy here, right? And I think a lot of people have been calling me that. But I think that what Derek reminds me, right? There's a 6'1", right, cornerback in the NFL who weighs 194 pounds. Do you know who that corner is?
6'1", 194.
Exact same, by the way, as Derek. Exact same, bit for bit.
I'm trying to think. Who is 6'1", 194? Because that feels small. I don't know. Who is it?
Well, it falls under two categories, but I'm thinking about Jalen Ramsey.
Jalen Ramsey's 194?
Yeah, so is Trayvon Diggs. Both of them are small.
I was gonna say Trayvon. I was gonna, if you had been like, I'm not gonna let you say I don't know, you have to pick someone. It was gonna be Trayvon Diggs, but I didn't know Jalen.
Ramsey, the guy who's not that heavy, and he plays heavy. And Derek plays heavy too. You know, he's not that heavy. And Derek is fast too. I just saw his pro day highlight. He what was it, under 4.4? I think it was 4.36.
Something like that.
At his pro day. I think Derek has the potential to, and as you just said, people were not throwing him. The guy in the NFL who I look at as a guy who doesn't have crazy stats, but it's because he's such a game-changing player, is Jalen Ramsey, and that's what he was immediately after coming into the league. He was the most pro-ready player in that draft.
No,
I think Derek is the same exact player in this one. I think that he is the most pro-ready. I think that he will immediately shut off the side of the field no matter what. I think what Patrick Surtain's got to do for the Broncos too next year, I think that he's going to have a crazy sophomore year. I think that Derek is just on textbook. You watch him play, he falls under every single box and checks all those boxes that you want in a corner.
I mean, I don't think you can go wrong with either of the two picks, to be honest. Which brings I have them 1A, 1B. I have them 1A.
Yeah,
1B.
I honestly do too.
But your pick, that was my absolute favorite. That's the one I want to talk about. Because I didn't talk about this with the Jets user because I didn't want to just be repeating things between the two of y'all. You took one of my top. I have 3 sleepers, quote unquote, in the draft. Guys that I think are going to end up getting drafted and play well above where they were drafted from. You took one of them last night in Jelani Woods, 6'7" tight end from Virginia.
6'7" and runs a 4.6.
Yeah, right. He's just now kind of learning how to play tight end. He's going to have to be developed into that because he was originally recruited to be a quarterback. But you can't teach that size to run that fast. What do you like about Jelani Woods?
So, Jelani Woods to me, right, and I only watched him play 2 games, like, live because I have friends who are Virginia Tech and Virginia fans, and they wanted me to watch a game with them. And I didn't obviously see much from him because, like, he didn't have a crazy season. Like,
He had a crazy combine.
But the combine, when I watched the combine, I was looking for tight ends for us to take in the third, fourth because we just lost Evan Ingram, and like I know that like it's not our biggest priority because we have bigger needs. But the Giants, like Joe Schoen is someone who's really good and Brian DeBoer are both really good developing tight ends, and like they did it with Dawson Knox in 2019. They took him in the third round and they developed him, and we all know that Dawson Knox is an incredible tight end, right? Like,
Right.
I think we all could. Absolutely good. And I think they're going to see this, and they're going to see Jelani Woods as this guy who they can take as this raw, physical, 6'6", 6'7" tight end who runs a 4'6", and just make him an athletic freak for that team. I don't see, like, it's just like, I love raw talent. That's why I love DK when he came into the draft.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how he felt where he did. I wanted the Giants to take him, but we had bigger needs. Raw talent like that is something that you don't find that often anymore, which I find crazy. Like, because it's football, you expect these big guys who need polishing, but you don't see that often. And tight ends, like the closest thing you see that is like Kyle Pitts, and he was polished.
Kyle Pitts is a stud. I'm biased. I'm a Falcons fan. I'm biased. So I think Kyle Pitts is just the truth.
I think we're a top 5 tight end in the league. Debatably top 3. Like, it could be debated as a top 3 tight end last year.
He's going to play wide receiver this year because they have absolutely nobody else.
And then people say, Patterson playing wide receiver. No one knows who's really playing wide receiver for you guys.
Yeah. Well, no. So I've talked about. I'm a Falcons fan. I was drafting for the Eagles. The Falcons were drafting at 82. You took Jelani Woods at 81. The way the Falcons. And by the way, I loved the Falcons users draft last night.
That was the guy from the UK, right?
No, the guy from the UK was Detroit.
Oh, yeah, Detroit. Okay.
Yeah, but the Falcons user last night, I loved his draft. He got Jermaine Johnson, Roger McCreary, who I think is an underrated. I didn't like the Jalen Tolbert wide receiver pick, but I understand we need wide receivers. Kenneth Walker, loved it. Drake Jackson at 82. I don't think that even comes close to happening in real life, but
I think it could. Jackson's fallen because of injury problems.
I wanted Atlanta because I think Pitts is going to have to move out to play wide receiver a little bit. I was like, oh my gosh, Jelani Woods falls to 82. And Atlanta were to somehow manage to get Jelani Woods to pair him up with Kyle Pitts and another rookie wide receiver. I'm okay with it. Let's see what happens. But no, I love Jelani Woods. Is that your like top sleeper in this year's draft? Jelani Woods?
He wasn't my top sleeper. I honestly I have a list of guys in my head who I kind of like think could be going in this late second, early third, who could potentially be guys who shock people, not like be like crazy players, but be like good starters for a team. Two of those players we already mentioned that. Jelani Woods, I think Drake Jackson's one of those guys. I think Drake Jackson's fantastic. So I do think he's a sleeper, but he's not my top guy. I honestly took him because I wanted to be like bold. Like, yeah. I'm taking a tight with like number 7 right now left. Like,
I mean, I did it. I made that. I think I made the most. When I took Alec Pierce at 51, there were guys that were like, "Whoa."
I was shocked when you did that.
But I love Alec Pierce. I think he's just an I talked about it with a Jets user. I think he's an athletic freak. There's not a lot of 6'3" guys that run 4.3s.
Yeah, he looks great. I had no idea who he was until you told me, and I looked him up, and I thought, wow, that was impressive.
Yeah. But Jelani Woods was one of my sleepers. I also have, my other 2 sleepers, and I'm talking about guys that will get drafted late. I think Jelani Woods goes top 3 rounds. I have one guy that I think could potentially go round 3, round 4-ish. And I'm just curious your thoughts. And if you don't know, that's fine. I think Kobe Bryant, the other corner from Cincinnati, is maybe getting overlooked because he played with Sauce. That's one of my sleepers who I think someone's going to draft him, and it's going to be very similar to, even though they don't play the same position, but I think it's going to be similar to when, Jarvis Landry got overlooked because he was playing with Odell Beckham Jr. at LSU. I think somebody's going to get Kobe Bryant and realize, okay, no, this guy's actually really good. It had nothing to do with the fact that he was playing next to Sauce Gardner. Do you have thoughts on Kobe Bryant as a corner?
I've seen a little bit of tape of him just because I want to look at some corners. I see what you see in him. I think he's good. I don't think he'll be the same level of overlooked as Landry was.
Well, Landry had a terrible combine, like historically bad.
I don't think that it's gonna be a situation where it's like you see it number 2 who's overlooked and then goes off and drops obviously corners can't drop 1,300 yards, but I don't think he's gonna be a Pro Bowler in his first 3 years, right?
Yeah, I mean that. I think Kobe Bryant's gonna be drafted and be like a dominant nickel corner. Like I see him as a guy who can come in and just kind of dominate and bully slot receivers. Because those smaller sized slot receivers seem to be the way teams are going. And I think Kobe Bryant could come into the league and that could be his niche. Like his rookie year is just, all right, you're going to be our slot guy. We need you to cover the slot. And then eventually he'll grow into that outside corner role. But I have Jelani, like I said, I have Jelani Woods, I have Kobe Bryant, and then a guy that I think is going to get drafted in round 6 or round 7. Because and there's a lot of guys that have no idea who I'm. Say what?
I know who you're.
Sincere McCormick, the running back from UTSA. Like, not a lot of guys watch UTSA football. I didn't watch a whole lot of UTSA football.
The 5'9" running back?
Yes, that plays wide receiver and returns kicks. And, I mean, if you watch tape of this dude, he does everything. And he does everything very well. He reminds me of Darren Sproles.
Interesting.
If you watch tape of Sincere McCormick, he gives off Darren Sproles vibes. Which means, Chargers fans and Saints fans that are watching, even though, I absolutely despise the Saints, the guy has hands. He's quick. He's shifty. He's maybe not as powerful as Darren Sproles, but I think he can do a lot of things well enough to carve down in this new passing league where you need wide receivers that can be dynamic as pass catchers. Maybe even if it's just on third down, I think Sincere McCormick is a guy someone's going to draft in round 6, round 7, that whoever gets him is going to get a steal to have been that late. I know you said you thought you knew who I was going to say. I feel like Sincere McCormick was not that person. So who were you going to say was your round 6, round 7 sleeper?
I have a lot of sleepers, but who I thought you were saying, I guess he's not really round 7 necessarily. Let me think. In my ranking, he's a round 7 player. It's someone who I honestly think is so underrated because I don't think people watch Coastal Carolina.
I watch Coastal, so I went to App, so I watched Coastal Carolina.
Oh, got it. So I'm not sure if you know who this is. Jeffrey Gunther. Edge rusher. There's no way you know who he is.
Not off the top of my head.
He is so talented, in my opinion. There's so many really good, late round players in my mind. I think, what's his name? I don't think he's that far back, down. I think he probably falls to, the 4th, 5th round. I think he's fantastic. James Cook.
The running back?
Georgia running back. I love Georgia running backs. I've always said that Georgia produces crazy running backs.
I'm a Georgia Tech fan. I grew up in Atlanta, so I actually like the other Georgia running back better than James Cook. I like Zamir White more than James Cook.
White is so overrated. I think he's by fault. I think he's actually, in my opinion, I'm probably regret saying this because I feel like now that I say this, he would like pop off. Because I did the Kamara. I said Kamara was overrated last draft, like when in his draft, and I got laughed at after that one. But I think that Zamir White's overrated, in my opinion.
Yeah, I don't know. I think Zamir White just again he's one of those guys. He just does a lot of things very well.
I think running back is just so hard to like read, and it's also now we're in a league now like where I just think that like someone like Zamir White isn't going to have as much upside as someone like James Cook. Like was it Cordell Patterson, right? Like Cordell Patterson made a crazy impact without being a good running back.
Yeah.
You know this of all people. You're a Falcons fan.
Yeah.
I think James Cook could come into the league and have that exact same effect as Cordell, as Eckler. Someone who will literally have 600 in a season.
I'm looking up your Coastal Carolina edge rusher right now.
Yeah, and then when you chance, I'm not sure if you have heard of him, but Isaiah Colonel, USC safety.
I do know the USC safety. Yeah.
Love him. He's massive, 6'4".
Big guy. Yeah, there's not a lot of 6'4" safeties out there.
Yeah.
So I think in the thing that I like about it, as far as being that size in today's NFL, where you get safeties that move into the box quite a bit to play linebacker. I think that I have two safeties. One of them is a little bit of a homer pick again because I'm from Atlanta, but and played on a bad team. The other one, it's not because he has a really cool, just amazing name for football. Smoke Monday. I think Smoke Monday is getting overlooked. The safety out of Auburn, and then the other guy that I like is Joanna Thomas, the safety from Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech was a very bad football team. I know this as a Georgia Tech fan. But when you watch tape of when things went well for that Georgia Tech defense, Thomas was involved. Like Thomas was around, either if it was a forced fumble, interception, key stop. Joanna Thomas was involved in that play. He lined up at safety. He lined up in the slot. He lined up in the box as a linebacker. He lined up deep. He lined up on the defensive line 10 times last year. Like, he lined up all over the field. And I think just that versatility alone is going to get him a shot. He's 6'1", he's 212. Obviously, he's not going to line up on the line in the NFL. It's going to sound like a homer pick again because I'm a Georgia Tech fan. But as far as safeties goes, I love Joanna Thomas. I love Smoke Monday. Smoke Monday has a great name. But those are my kind of sleeper safeties since you brought up safeties. I love both of those guys.
Yeah, someone who I drafted, who I'm really high on, I think you mentioned him too when you were talking about my draft. I think that he's going to be so good. Brian Asamoah.
Yes, the linebacker out of Oklahoma.
And also, when I said it, I think people were confused when I said this in the draft, that he was like Jabril Peppers. I don't think people remember that Jabril Peppers played linebacker in college mostly. Like for Michigan, he was almost always in the linebacker slot. Like, almost always. He played everywhere. That's what Jabril Peppers used to do, and I wish we used him that way. We didn't. I think that he'll fit that role. I think that Brian Asamoah is such a crazy, talented player. And I think his combine kind of dirty. Because he's a lot more of a physical threat than what it shows.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, I like Asamoah. I think but what's funny is I think the Oklahoma player that's kind of getting slept on the most as far as building up to the draft, and I don't really understand why, is Kennedy Brooks, the running back out of Oklahoma.
He's so good.
I like Kennedy Brooks. Again, he's got good size. He's not the fastest, but 5'11", 209, he moves pretty good. He moves pretty well for 5'11", 209. I think he could be a 3-down back. He catches the ball good enough. He didn't catch the ball a lot. because I think they had a more of a 2 running back system, a third down type of back that would come in on third downs. But I think Kennedy Brooks is the Oklahoma player that's being slept on the most going into the draft.
It's crazy because I find it so funny, right? Because I think, like, 3 months ago, if you asked someone about this draft, they'd be like, not worth having picks in. And now, in the last, like, 3 weeks, I've kind of been watching more and more tape, and I was, like, so confused recently, like, why the hell NFL teams were trading for picks so much. And this is the most I've ever seen big players trading for picks. I had no idea why. I was so confused. I was like, this draft isn't that deep. You know, there aren't that any crazy big players outside the top 5. I was confused, and now I'm looking at it, I'm like, okay, makes sense. This draft is one of the deepest draft classes I've ever seen.
Yeah. Yeah, it is.
It goes deep. Like, you can have, like, that's why I love the Giants right now, with their position. They have 5 picks in the top 3 rounds. That makes me so happy as a Giants fan. That's probably 3-4 starters right there. Because just how deep his classes.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh man. Well, yeah, man. I appreciate you coming on my it's a sports school podcast. I'm just a teacher that talks sports. It's always nice to have co-teachers, as I call them, come in and help me teach this content. So I appreciate you coming on. I'm gonna give you an opportunity to do your thing, plug your podcast, get these listeners, and do you, man. Take over.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. I really appreciate it. My friend and I are starting a new podcast called Reverse Bandwagon. Where essentially it's mostly a football podcast, but we're kind of like going to be going with the flow, talking about sports in general, and we're kind of going to be following like teams that like no one's heard of. So I think it hence the name Reverse Bandwagon, like really bad teams that no one's heard of. We're like diehard fans, right? So it's like we have like this like Division III baseball team, and we have like this Division 4 soccer team we're going to be following. Like, it's been really fun. I think it's really fun for us. He's a Patriots fan, a Giants fan, so we also figure about Bill Belichick all the time. So yeah, that's my podcast. Reverse Bandwagon. We should be on Spotify in the next 2 weeks or so. But if you have any questions, DM me on Twitter. I think you dropped it earlier, but if you don't mind, I'll say it again.
Yeah, go ahead, man.
You can just look at me. It's a weird name because I haven't changed my handle, but it's GR21146340, and it says Lucas Gray. So yeah, hit me up if you want to come on or anything. Dwayne, I'm happy to have you if you want to come on at some point. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Oh yeah, you go ahead and tell your co-host that I've got the perfect. It's a New England pick. I got the guy that Belichick's going to draft late in the draft. He's going to blow up, and it's going to be like, why didn't anybody else take him? It's Derek King. It's Derek King, the quarterback for Houston that transferred to Miami.
Really, you think Derek King is going to
No.
What?
No, it's the hold on. This is because Belichick plays chess, not checkers. He's going to draft Derek King. He's going to become a freaking slot wide receiver who's just going to be quicker than he is fast. He's going to always manage to somehow get open. And then he's going to, 2 to 3 times a year, they're going to run some sort of trick play because Derek King played quarterback in college, and he's going to throw a deep bomb. He's going to have like 3 throwing touchdowns a year. It's the
like Edelman Part 2.
He's Edelman 2. He's Edelman 2. Derek King is Edelman 2. I'm telling you right now, I'm calling it on, what is it? April 9th. All
right, we'll see. We'll see, yeah. All right.
But hey, man, I appreciate you coming on. You have a great night.
Yeah, of course. Thanks. Have
Hey,
a good one.
no problem. You too. Yeah, check that guy out. Check out his podcast. Look, shout out to them. Starting a podcast is hard. Starting a podcast takes dedication. So I'm gonna be glad to go in there and help those guys out. Look, this episode's been a little bit long. Class has been in session for 94 minutes. So I'm gonna go ahead. I'm gonna shut this thing down. But first, like my man said earlier, rest in peace to Dwayne Haskins. Gone too soon. Life's short. Enjoy it while you can. I thank God every day that He allows me to wake up. So look, rest in peace to Dwayne Haskins. Thoughts and prayers go out to his family, his friends, his teammates. I get a lot of respect to Chase Claypool, who put out a video today, showing that it's okay to be hurt. It's okay to be weak at times like this. So, Ohio State, all of his Ohio State teammates, all of his Steeler teammates, all of his Washington teammates, his family, his friends, again, prayers to you guys. Rest in peace, Dwayne Haskins. And NCAA men's basketball, you guys got detention. You can't have the floor buckle in the biggest game of your season. You just can't. The floor can't buckle in the national championship game. Get it together, NCAA men's basketball. That's all I got. Look, shout out to Effortless Entertainment. They fixed my audio issues that I was having early on. Shouts out to Takar Realties. They have condos at Sunset Beach and Myrtle Beach that you can stay in. Log into Airbnb, VRBO. Search for those. Mention Sports School. Discount at certain parts of the year. Marlon versus Marlon, I talked about them earlier. Shout out to those guys. They're the reason that I'm on episode 45 and going. So, thanks to you guys. You guys are the listeners. You guys are the reasons I do this. And that's all I got tonight. Peace.